Hello again, everyone, and welcome back to Reddit Aliens. I'm John, and as always, thank you so much for being here. We've got a new topic today, and a good one. Let's go for it. Teachers of Reddit. What is a parent-teacher conference that will haunt you for the rest of your life? Please remember to like, share, and subscribe. It was my first year teaching at an elementary school. Dad showed up with his son. This boy was a little shy in class, and he was very bright and responsible. He had started the year below grade level and had worked hard to get on track. The dad was smelling strongly of alcohol, weaving and slurring his words. I called the office to have someone come down. We escorted them to the office and had him wait. He ended up getting sick in the trash can. I remember the look of embarrassment, anger, and sadness on the son's face. I had other conferences scheduled, so I couldn't stay long, but the police had to be called by the administration. The next day, the son came in and said he was sorry. I told him I was proud of him, and that I was sorry his dad was sick, and that I hoped he felt better soon. That seemed to cheer him up a little. I sent home the progress report and great examples of his classwork. I did try to reschedule, but it never happened. The worst of it was around the holidays, the student would ask if he could come home with me, or he'd mention that he'd wished I was his mom. I told him that his family would miss him too much, and he said, no, they won't. It broke my heart. He moved schools the following year. My first year of teaching, I had a mother who pretty much ignored everything I was saying and assumed it was all bad. I opened with, hey, your daughter has shown some excellent work in class this semester. She replies with, I doubt that. She can't do anything. When I try and assure her she had in fact done well with proof, she dismissed it and said she will never be as good as her siblings. I then offered some advice for how to improve her already decent grade, and the mother replies, that's it. I ground her for a month. From that point on, everything I said, she literally added another month onto her daughter's grounding time. I ended up just summing up as quick as possible to try and save the daughter spending the rest of her life grounded. Called the parents because 8th grade student was bullying another student. Bullied student is confined to a wheelchair, and I observed the bully throwing gum at him during class. Father comes in but only speaks Spanish. Cape Verdean math teacher says he knows enough Spanish to translate. So we began meeting with the math teacher, myself, father of bully, and bully. Father, something in Spanish. Math teacher, what he is saying is that he admires your passion and, bully interrupts, that's not what he's saying. He said, you're a f***ing liar. That's when I noticed how pissed off Dad looks. He angrily tells me something else before getting up, nearly flipping the table, and leave. I asked the math teacher what he just said. He told me he didn't know. You would think that in a school that had children that spoke a different language at home, that there would be someone else in the building that was actually possibly fluent in that language, right? Or the district, if nothing else. More unforgettable than haunting, I was teaching a very low ability group about Romeo and Juliet, and how I shall bite my thumb at them was an insulting thing to do. One of the children didn't understand what an insult was, and I, not thinking, said it's when you say something mean about someone. For example, if I said your mom smelled, then that would be an insult. Unfortunately, the child really took this to heart, probably increased by being an Asian respectful to women background, and left the room in anger. I caught up with him and apologized, and let him know it was only an example and not me trying to be mean, and he seemed to accept that. However, the next day his dad came in demanding a meeting with me. He was furious that I had been insulting his wife in my lessons, and was out for blood. I made the same point that it was only an example and I wasn't implying anything about his wife. And I shit you not, his response was, I don't care. How dare you know my wife doesn't smell? At that point, it took every ounce of control I had to keep a straight face, and the rest of the conversation is a vague memory. I eventually managed to pacify him, but I will never forget that meeting as long as I live. I started to warn a parent that his son was hanging out with gang members and smoking pot. My assistant principal stopped me and pulled me into the hall, forbidding me to talk about gangs or suggesting son was taking drugs. Next year, student was beaten to death with 2 others by home invaders who heard that they had a drug stash. One of the dead was another student of mine. He's a nice kid. My first parent-teacher night was terrifying. Mom and Dad walk in looking like they could have give a shit about being there. I've got my happy face on and tried telling them about what's been going on in the classroom. Finally, I finished my spiel, and Dad says, so what's this about you calling my daughter tight pants? I'm freaking out, flipping through my mind about what he could possibly be talking about. Last thing I want to be considered as a pervert as a male teacher at an elementary school. Then it hit me. On the first day of school, the class was sitting on the floor, crisscross, and her jeans were literally so tight she couldn't cross her legs on the floor. She looked like a weeble wobble trying to sit down. The class laughed, and she was cool with it. All I said was, "Okay, tight pants, do your best." I guess she told her parents in passing, and their radar went off, which was apropos. But after explaining the story and breaking a sweat, Mom and Dad gave off a "sure, right," without cracking a smile at the confusion. I guess that's understandable, but all I was thinking was, F you. I'm not trying to pull something with your 4th grade daughter. Maybe next time don't buy your 9-year-old jeans that prevent her from sitting crisscross applesauce, mother effer. I had a student's mom come in to defend her 15-year-old son's complete lack of work in my class. She felt the need to let me know that he was a really great kid, despite doing next to nothing in drawing class, but complaining and talking shit about everyone around him. It got weird when she recounted a story about overhearing him and his friends having a conversation about sex. According to her, the fact that her son was still a virgin was a testament to his upstanding character. I failed to see the connection between not yet having had sex and not doing in drawings in drawing class. Edit. To respond to the questions, drawing class means art class specializing in drawing techniques. Technically, it was drawing 1. Second edit. Wow. Many of you must be naturally gifted artists according to your assessment of a drawing course being a waste of time or a blow-off class. Students who blew off the class failed. Many of my students who took it seriously went on to higher education and careers in art. As someone who's taken exactly 1 art class since elementary school, I can tell you that my intro to drawing class in college was great. I loved it, and I did learn stuff, so don't worry about what people are going to say. Everyone's going to have an opinion and judge things. Just help the people you can and be great. Teacher here. This happened about 10 years ago. A parent once popped by to chat with me. I think it was during lunch or something because I was alone in my room. He was concerned that his son was failing. I was explaining what assignments the kid was missing, and Dad started getting very heated. Not angry per se, but agitated and loud. The louder he got, the more physical his gestures. Since I hadn't been expecting him, I was loading some stuff into a closet in my room when he showed up, and pretty soon he had me boxed into the closet speaking sternly, not exactly yelling, shaking his finger in my face. I'm not a small woman at 6 feet tall, but he was bigger than me, angry, in my space, and preventing me from leaving. I was flustered enough that I couldn't really think clearly enough to take back control of the situation. I can't say that I specifically was fearing for my safety, but I was sort of in that deer in the headlights mode, where I could see oncoming disaster but couldn't move out of the way. This was during school hours, and another student walked in, saw what was happening, turned around and booked it. At first I thought he thought the situation looked inappropriate, and I was having some sort of assassination in my classroom during school. Goodbye career. But he actually went and got another staff, thank God. They interrupted the incident and Dad stepped back. As soon as he took a step back, I think he realized what he'd been doing and how his behavior was pretty scary. Like I said, I don't think he was mad at me specifically, just the situation, and all he wanted was the best for his special needs son. It was pretty clear that once he took a literal step back from the situation, he was pretty appalled at himself. I didn't hear from him again, and the kid transferred out of unrelated to the incident a couple of months later. I'll never forget how one mother demanded that I give her daughter an A because giving her a B will ruin her chances of getting to a top-tier college. She told me that I have no compassion and consideration for her future. Her daughter barely participated in class, and honestly, she was not the brightest bulb in the room. I still cringe every time I remember her sense of entitlement. We had a meeting with the mom of a student who was diagnosed with severe ADHD. I'm talking couldn't sit in a chair for more than 3 seconds. We asked why he wasn't medicated since he struggled so severely, and it really hurt his own academics, as well as the victims of his distractions. She broke down crying, telling us that she had been gang raped, and then gone so crazy she had been institutionalized. She then shared with us that while in the state institution, they treated her like a guinea pig and tested her on every drug under the sun, resulting in her being in a zombie-like state. The student's dad is in jail for life, so they were under the care of CPS at the time. So, because of the zombie-like issue with how the institution medicated her, she says she will never medicate her son. He runs wild through the school, often hurting other children, and we can't do anything. The other most haunting conference Mom couldn't come to school because she had recently had a stroke. We have this little boy who you can't help but love to death, even though he does the opposite of everything you ask. But you can tell he's seen a lot in his 12 years. Anyway, things were getting pretty bad as he had thrown a desk at another kid in my classroom, so we had the aunt come to school for a parent conference. She shared with us that when our student was 6, he watched his uncle murder his dad. She also shared that he says he can't wait to do his uncle like his uncle did his daddy one day. I teach in an urban school and hold a lot of parent conferences, so these stories could easily continue. Generally, I get along very well with my students' parents, even the parents of students who require a lot of redirection and heart-to-heart conversations about their behavior, even the parents that other educators tell me don't care about their children. Over the years, I've found that the vast majority of parents care about their children, and as long as I do a good job of showing them that I also care about their child's success, we get along great. I try to approach our conversations as an ally in the effort to help their kid do well in life. I finally had a meeting where I felt like the parent did not have the child's best interest in mind, and it broke my heart. It wasn't call the authorities abusive, but I quickly realized that anything I said would be used to manipulate my student at home, so I just ended the meeting as quickly as possible, making only very general comments. It was a downer. You could only hope as a parent that your child has a teacher like you. With an approach like this, you should have a career loaded with success. And to every teacher out there, thank you for what you do. It may feel thankless, but it isn't. Guitar teacher here. I'd been teaching this kid, 10 or 11 years old, for about 3 months, and this little bastard wasn't doing anything outside of my studio. I had to reteach just how to hold a guitar at virtually every lesson. Every week would be the same speech. You have to practice every day, even just a little bit, blah blah blah. Never see his parents. They just wait out in the parking lot. One day, the kid's father comes in and marches straight at me, clearly angry, and gets right in my face, pointing and barking. I've been paying good money for these lessons, and my kid hasn't learned a goddamn thing. What exactly are you teaching him? Calmly and quietly, I said, well, for one thing, to practice every day. The father's face kind of dropped, and he looked at his kid, then back at me. He's supposed to practice every day? Yes, for at least half an hour. He looked back at the kid and then started to get huffy again. Well, what's he supposed to practice? I looked at the kid and said, get out your music and show your dad. The kid, realizing he was caught, just silently opened his bag and pulled out the large stack of music he had been given, never once looking at me or his father. I thought the father was going to pop right then and there from embarrassment, either because he was too stupid to realize that you can't learn an instrument in half an hour per week, or that his kid lied to him and put him in this situation. They never returned, which was fine. They were wasting my time anyway. I've had similar run-ins with parents, almost always with the same reasons, but never that aggressive. Please remember, if you're putting your kids into music lessons, that they have to devote some time to it every day if you want them to get better. Former preschool teacher here. Parent-teacher meetings always stressed me out, and more often than not, they took up the entire week. After a particularly challenging one midweek, I decided to blow off some steam and hit up a dance club I frequent on occasion. So, I'm basically dressed like a skank, a wee bit drunk, and grinding all over this sexy menfolk. One guy in particular caught my eye, and we ended up making out pretty heavily. We talk, I enjoy him, and I invite him back to my place. A really stand-up guy. He explains that he would love to, but wanted me to know that he's in an open marriage, and while his wife is cool with him having his dates and girlfriends, he's not looking to replace her or get involved, etc. Suffice it to say, that kinda killed it for me, but we still talked well into the evening and parted on good terms. You do see where this is going, right? Fast forward the next evening to parent-teacher conference for one of the newer girls in my class. I'd met mom several times during drop-off, but when the guy whose tongue I'd had down my throat not 24 hours before walked in, I nearly shat myself. What followed was the most awkward parent-teacher meeting I'd ever had, including ones where I've had to talk with parents about why their kid can't tweak each other's penises, a game they called penis tickle, which ultimately led to a discovery of an abusive relative, a child who wouldn't use the bathroom but would poop in his hand and hide it behind the fish tank. This happened several times, and the fact that it isn't abnormal for their child to fall asleep whilst humping the living hell out of the bunny, the soft plushie she'd had since birth. Those were difficult, but coming face to face with a dad who knows I secretly like to be tied up and spanked haunted me for a long time.